One of the most common pieces of life advice is to love yourself. Just love yourself, and all of your problems will take care of themselves. But if this really obvious solution actually worked, why do so many of us struggle to do it? You've probably heard people say, just love yourself, a million times, and you probably replied, yeah, that sounds right. But inside you were thinking, you think I don't know that? You think I haven't tried that? It's really hard. Knowing that you should love yourself and actually knowing how to do it and being able to do it are two very different things. And it can sound quite patronizing when people spout the just love yourself message when they don't seem to take into consideration the fact that, yeah, we're all trying to do that and it's difficult to do. And that not being able to do it can actually make you feel worse because you're like, I'm trying, and I keep failing. And then you wonder, are they lying? Are all these people telling me just to love myself lying? Or am I broken? Is there something wrong with me? What I've learned on my own healing journey is that we are not broken. There is nothing wrong with us. We have just been taught a wrong idea of what self-love is. Society kind of gives us two ways to think about self-love. The first is that it comes from our virtuous qualities and the consequences of them. So you're smart, you're kind, you're funny, you're beautiful, you're selfless. But the issue here is, what about the days when you're not those things? What about when you're lazy, or you make a mistake, or you're unkind? Are you unworthy of love on those days? And also, there's always someone who's going to be more smart and kinder and even more loving and conscientious than you. Is that person worth more and better and deserving of more love than you just because they have more of those qualities? The logic here doesn't work and it starts to fall apart. And then we come to point number 2 that society tells us, which is fine. It's not because of those qualities that you have, it's because you are inherently special. Now, hearing that, you probably either cringed or you're waiting and hoping that I'm going to say something you've never heard that suddenly clicks a switch in you that makes you go, oh, yes, I am inherently worthy. And I'm afraid that having been in both of those positions myself, neither one of them is helpful. You are indeed inherently lovable and special just because you are you. But the issue is that so is everybody else. Everybody else is 1 in 8 billion. They are uniquely them. There is nobody like them, just as there's nobody like you. And if everybody is lovable and special, nobody is special. And knowing that doesn't really help you feel like you are special and worthy of love either. So if self-love isn't either of those two things, what is it? Well, self-love is not a continuous state, like you finally hit it and you stay there and you reach it. Self-love is an action. It is a continuous process. Self-love is a verb, not a noun. You actually have to do self-love. This idea of self-love being a verb has been around in therapy circles for a long time, but I came across it most recently in Matthew Hussey's book, which I'm holding upside down. In Matthew Hussey's book, Love Life. In the book, Matt makes the great point that not only is love a verb, most of us have this misconception of self-love that it means we have to be kind of romancing ourselves. So we apply what we learn and what we know kind of works in romance to self-love. And that model doesn't work. If we're applying the romantic model to our way of being self-loving to ourselves, then we book spa days, we book holidays, we get tickets to exciting concerts and seminars and things like that. And these might work as acts of self-love, and they may make us feel self-loving and worthwhile in the short term, but they don't lead to any lasting consequences. I'm sure you've done those things and you're watching a video on how to be self-loving, so you probably know this. If we want to properly understand self-love as a verb, then we need to know why these actions don't give us the intended outcome that we're looking for. The reason these actions don't work is because the romantic model doesn't work when you apply it to self-love. Romance is predicated on desire. Desire comes from that gap between wanting something and not actually having it. You can't desire something that you don't want, and you can't desire something that you already have. It has to be in that in-between space where you want something, but you don't have it. This works really well with a romantic partner. We see someone we like, we desire them, we want them, but we don't have them yet. And maybe at the beginning of a relationship, we might have some idea of having them, and we don't know too much about them. So there's this fun and exciting mystery of getting to know someone. And the intensity and the passion of that love process is overwhelming and wonderful. But inevitably, as you do get to know the other person, it fades. As the saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt. And as the relationship goes on, there comes this moment when they become familiar, when you know enough about them, so much about them, that they are no longer this wonderful and exciting mystery. And as you know more about them, it's harder and harder to maintain that passionate romantic desire, because there's no longer that gap where this mystery can emerge. And now apply that to yourself. Who do you know better than yourself? You have spent every minute of every day of your entire life with yourself. You know every flaw that you've had and every mistake that you've ever made. That's a lot of familiarity. It is no wonder that you have contempt for yourself. And what's worse is you can't run away. So you heap blame and criticism and guilt all upon yourself because you know that you're never going to leave. You know so much about yourself that you probably can't even like yourself. So how on earth are you supposed to love yourself? And here's where the real insight comes. In the same way that two people in a long-term relationship need to find a way to make that relationship work after the initial passionate romantic desire has faded down, so too do you need to find a way to get to love yourself in spite of knowing everything that you know about yourself. And to do this, you need to shift your thinking of self-love away from this idea as a big, romantic, wonderful feeling, and into an action, into a verb. When you think of love as an action, liking yourself is no longer actually a prerequisite. In a relationship, you might not like the way that your partner loads the dishwasher, but you still love them. And you show that love to them by the way that you do things in the relationship for them, for you, and for the relationship. Applying that same logic to your relationship with yourself, then the phrase loving yourself, you can swap out the word loving for taking care of, nurturing, encouraging, looking after, standing up for. Loving yourself becomes something that you do on a daily basis. So if we're not using that romantic model, and we're certainly not using that achievements or qualities-based model, then what can we do? Well, as I said, you can look to the successful qualities underpinning a long-term relationship. But I think even then, there's still this conditionality that you need to work for me and I need to be working for you, otherwise this isn't going to end up lasting. I think an even better way of looking at self-love is through that of a healthy parent-child dynamic. Nowhere is real love more obvious than in a healthy relationship between a parent and a child. Imagine asking a parent, "Why do you love your child?" They're not going to reply, "Oh, it's because he's funny and smart and handsome and so kind and always brings home straight A's." I mean, some of them might, but most won't. A parent might be proud of their child because of those things, but they don't love them any more or any less because of them. Their love for their child also isn't dependent on liking their child. Their child might be really hard to like on some days, and yet they still love them. And if you ask a parent, why do you love your child? They're going to say, because they're my child. And there'll be a kind of implicit duh after that, like you've asked some really silly question. So listen to the principle that's at play here. I love them because they are mine. Regardless of their flaws and their mistakes and the annoying things that they do, regardless of how much I like them or not, I love them because they are mine. They are what I've got. There are 8 billion people in the world, and about 2.2 billion of those are children. Of all those people and of all those children, you are the only one that is yours forever. You may already have kids of your own, and obviously they're also yours too in a sense, but they grow up, they become independent, they leave home and they live their own lives. You're no longer responsible for them. But you can't grow up and leave yourself. You are always with you. You are always responsible for you. And so imagine if you could apply the same principle that underpins the parent-child relationship to yourself. Imagine if someone were to ask you, why do you love yourself? And you went, because I'm my person. And you'd say that as if it were completely obvious, because if you really think about it, it is. How would you treat yourself if you realized, I am here, I exist, I have been put here by God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, and I've got to take care of this being here. I've got to look after my existence, and nobody else can do that for me. Birth, you were given a person to look after. It's you. And, of course, when you're very young, your parents take over this responsibility for you. And they may have done a good enough job, they may have not done a good enough job. But now, today, as an adult, that responsibility sits solely on your shoulders. And now it's your responsibility to look after yourself. And most of us have never actually thought about it this way. We've looked outside of ourselves. We've looked for other people to care for, our friends, our family, our partners, our pets. But we've never turned that sense of responsibility onto ourselves. Instead, what we've done is, in the same way that we've looked for other people to care about, we've looked outside of ourselves to be taken care of. We've looked for somebody beyond us to come and take care of us. We've looked to our partners and our families and our friends and our colleagues and our mentors to validate us, to make us feel safe and secure and worthwhile and worthy of love. But really, the answer to who can do this for us is right here. It's ourselves. And it doesn't matter how beautiful or capable or strong or wonderful any of the other 8 billion people on this planet are and how you match up to them. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you recognize that you are responsible for you and you need to take care of yourself. I have beaten myself up for years, and I've heaped criticism upon myself and used that actually as motivation to go and achieve things in life. And those things have very briefly given me a sense that I was good enough, that I was worthy, that I could love myself. But none of it lasted. And while I was doing that, I've worked too hard, I've neglected myself, I've been horrible to other people. And I've made stupid and embarrassing mistakes that I beat myself up for and piled guilt and blame upon myself for. And it caused me a horrible anxiety. And to this day, it still can cause me horrible anxiety if I don't try and keep that in check. But in the last few months, I've finally started to realize that I need to be compassionate to myself. I'm slowly realizing that I will always make mistakes and that it's okay for me to make mistakes. It's normal and healthy for me to make mistakes, and it doesn't make me any less worthy of love. Beating myself up for things that I do doesn't help, in the same way that hanging my sense of self-worth on my next achievement doesn't work. I'm learning to view myself as a good enough parent and as a child who wants to learn and explore and feel safe in the world, and who can do that under the gaze of my good enough parent. I am my person, and I love myself because I'm all that I've got. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. I wish you all the best for your healing journey, and I'll see you again soon.